Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Battlefield Project podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Rhoda, and we are the podcast for people who understand that life is a battle and only the strong will thrive. I'm joined by my good friend here, Stu. I'm going to say your last name wrong, Segura.
You got it. You got it.
Beautiful. Awesome, man. I'm going to introduce Stu here in a minute, but before I do, as always, at the beginning here, I have one favor to ask. If you watch this show, listen to this show, and you get some value out of it, or you think, hey, you know what, I know somebody that could get some value out of this episode, please share it with them. The whole purpose of this podcast is to inspire people and to let everybody know that nobody goes through life untouched. Everybody experiences some kind of battle in their lives, whether it's momentary or it lasts forever and ever. But the people who are winning in life and successful and happy, they fight their way through those battles and they come out stronger on the other side. Whereas the other flip of the coin is, people let the battles destroy them. They play the victim card and they're the ones sulking through life unhappy and unfulfilled. So my goal when I bring these guests on is to give them a spotlight to share their stories, experiences, and the different battles that they've gone through in life, and then how and why they fought their way through those battles and the life that they're living now because they had the courage and fortitude to fight those battles and win those battles. So without further ado, read Stu's bio here real quick. He is the owner of Mattress Dr. Lafayette, a specialized mattress and furniture store that serves clients locally in Louisiana. He has overcome severe drug addiction and turned his life around for the better. He has a background in IT consulting and selling on Amazon professionally. He has a sweet tooth and beautiful fiance, Erin, and 3 wonderful children, Braden, Ethan, and Cadence. They have 2 dogs, Lucy and Bella, that are like family. When Stu isn't spending time with his family or working on his business, you can find him drooling over sports cars, at the gym lifting weights, at a soccer game for Ethan, who travels competitively, or watching MMA. He has aspirations of one day speaking on stage, being a business consultant, and owning real estate across America. He also has an everlasting desire to develop his relationship with God. We have so many similarities in that bio that I'm like, check. So like, I want to do that too in the future. Check. Cool, man. So Stu, brother, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to hear your story and the battles you've experienced.
Thanks, Matt, man. I'm so happy to be here. I've been watching your podcast for a good little while now, and I really appreciate you having me, dude.
Absolutely, man. My pleasure. I think everybody's got a story to share, and if I can have you come on and all the other guests come on, share their story and touch one person's life and inspire one person, our work on this earth is being served.
Oh no, absolutely, man. So yeah, my story. I'm gonna start with probably being in college. I wasn't really one that really wanted to go to school, but my parents kind of pushed me to go to school, and I worked the whole time that I was in school, and I started to realize, like this isn't really what I want to do, but I kept kind of doing it from that pressure that I was getting through my parents. And I think over the course of that, and there wasn't like one instance that came from it, but I was partying a whole lot. I was drinking almost every night. I would drink till midnight or 1, and then I'd miss my first class at 8 a.m. And over the course of a couple of years from that, I started to develop these bad drug habits. And in the beginning, when you first get on something like that, it gives you this sense of entitlement, like, I'm going to accomplish more. This is going to give me more energy and stuff like that. And I thought in my head when I was doing that, that it was gonna further me in life. But in all reality, it just kind of brought me to my knees. But that went on for a good while. And in the beginning, I was very functional. I was still able to go to work. When I showed up to class, I wasn't flunking out, even though I didn't do really well. My thing was more about missing class because I was up late every night. And through that, as things progressed, I would say when I had my first child, things had started to get a little bit worse. I had a lot of pressure on me as far as like that financial anxiety of like, okay, how am I gonna, provide for this kid? Because I don't even have my own shit straight. And even though I was still in his life and everything like that, I kind of like struggled behind closed doors. And basically like when he would go to bed or something like that, when I would have him, I would be using drugs and drinking and things like that. And even though I was able to kind of hide it from him, I didn't have it all together by any means. And so I kind of went a few years like that. At one point in time, I had to move in with my grandma because I couldn't afford my bills and to pay for my son and things like that. And whenever I would have my son at that time, I would get him just a few days a week as me and the mother weren't together. Um, when I have him, I wasn't using when I had him, but the second he would leave, I think from just all of this like depression and disappointment in myself, I was turning to drugs and alcohol. And it would start like the second I would get off the clock, I'd be ready to go and get something. I wasn't really doing it at work at that time or anything like that because I knew that I needed to keep my job. But it was like this mental obsession, man, that it was just nasty. That I would spend as much money as I possibly could on it. I didn't really care what it was. I just wanted that escape. And you know, some people have like a sob story behind them as far as like, I went through this craziness as a child or anything like that, but I didn't really have that. My parents were really loving. I kind of don't know exactly where it came from. I know that through the course of later on, I'll get to that, but through the course of consulting, or I'm sorry, counseling and rehabilitation and through AA, I kind of realized that it can be like a genetic thing and a hereditary thing. So if anything, I'm just going to chalk it up to that and not any particular experience that I had in my past. Um, so anyway, I kept on going through like that a few more years, and I met another woman, and she turned out to be pregnant as well. Well, long story short, I thought I was going to try to turn my life around then and try to be with her. It ended up not being my child. And that's something that, like, when it happened, I think the only parents that knew were like my other son's mom and my parents, because I wasn't talking about it to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something crazy, man. I knew that it was a gift from God because the woman the woman was probably the most toxic that I've ever met in my life. She would take a bottle of vodka, like some cheap Dobra, and put in like a packet of Crystal Light and just like turn it upside down, and like, I mean, like the nastiest drunk I've ever seen. And I was actually trying to leave her before she ended up pregnant. And so that was actually a blessing from God. But at the time, I was upset because I had actually met the child and everything like that. Because at that time, it took probably 4 or 5 days for me to get the results. And I just packed up my shit from her house, and like I didn't even leave a note. I just fucking left.
Yeah.
I was done with that. And so from there, I had actually I had met my current fiance, and in the beginning when we met, I had just had surgery on my ACL and my MCL, and so I was still taking Lortab and stuff like that. And after we were dating for a little while, I started to get back into meth use, and it got really bad to the point to where I was hiding it from her. She didn't know anything about this at all, and she was kept trying to get closer to me, to like, I guess to, just to know more about me and things like that. And I was pushing her away because I wanted to just be like in this little zone to where it was Stu's world, and I'm just like off in my addiction, doing whatever the hell I wanted to. And when she was actually pregnant for my son Ethan, um, was actually when um, I kicked her out of our apartment. I told her that I didn't love her. I went through like this whole crazy thing, and even though that was really traumatic for her and later down the road for me, it ended up putting me in rehab, and which I desperately needed probably years before that. And so I went to rehab. I completed my 30 something days there. I had kind of like a mental shift. I didn't know anything about AA. I didn't know. Um, it's one of those things, you don't really know how bad your problem is until you get out of it and you have other people kind of guiding you. And so I completed treatment there, and then I went on to staying in a sober living environment for around 9 months. And it was kind of from there that I was able to kind of look at all the things that I was struggling with and kind of figure out the reasons why I was doing what I was doing. And it was just kind of like almost like self mutilation as far as like my identity. Like I wouldn't let myself get above a certain level because I was just kept bringing myself down. And it wasn't through until I got through all the counseling and things like that I realized, I needed to make a really big change. And I would say that was the last time I used, but it wasn't. But that was probably one of the biggest ones that started to keep me away from like the speed and things like that. And from that point on, I started to get back into church. I actually found a new church. So I grew up Catholic, but I ended up finding like a non-denominational church, and it actually spoke a whole lot more to me than the Catholic religion ever did. I grew up Catholic. I went to private school, things like that. It was mandatory that I went to church every Sunday, but I never really like felt anything out of it until I found my own church. And I think that was just an experience that I needed to have, kind of like this big wake up call. And another big reason that pushed me to rehab was, but before I went to rehab, Erin, my now fiance, wasn't allowing me to see my son. And that's kind of what like broke my heart and realized, like I can't live this way. This isn't what I really want. I was so bad at one point, man, that I would stay up 3 days in a row. And when I would wake up, I would be so depressed that I would want to start crying. It was either cry and be depressed or take the drugs, and it would obliterate all of that negativity in my head. And of course it's crazy, man, because that drug is such the devil that once you put it in your body, you immediately start thinking that you're going to fix all the problems that you have. In my head, dude, I still thought I was going to on my way to becoming a millionaire because I had all these ideas, but I never executed on any of them. And, it wasn't till I got off of that shit that, I realized that, this isn't the life that I want to live. This isn't the example that I want to be. This wasn't what I was put on this earth for. And so ever since then, I've just kind of looked at everything differently. And I did do, AA and things like that for many years to kind of get through that. And, now I don't really go to many meetings or anything like that, but I've had this whole mental shift when it comes to things like that I try to stay away from that as far as possible. I cut off a lot of friends. I try not to hang around, negative people that aren't doing things with that life, because it does rub off on me. And that's a big reason, why I joined Apex that we're both in. And I'm just trying to be a better human being at all times. And it's definitely something, I like to share my story with anyone that's struggling with addiction, because it is really powerful. And it doesn't matter where you came from, if you were abused or not. It might just be that it's in your DNA too. And not to say that that's okay, but it's okay, because once you accept that you're in it, you can accept to move on. It's when you think you don't have a problem is when you can't move on. And I was there for so long. I would always say, oh, it's not that bad, but it was really, really bad. And, there were certain people like my parents who knew before anyone else. but I think it because I was their child, their oldest son, it was really hard for them to sit me down. And even though they did, it was um it was far prolonged from what it should have been. And I know from that experience, I'm going to try to look at, like if my kids ever go through something like this, I'm going to try to, be a little more proactive if I see something like that.
Yeah.
And, I just try to reuse that gift if possible, for anybody else that's struggling too, because I've heard stories, of people that never drank, never used drugs, and they end up getting addicted in their 50s because they never even tried anything like that.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, it starts with alcohol. Next thing you know, you're on heroin or something crazy like that, which you never in a million years thought that you would touch.
Yeah.
But it just ruins people's lives, man. And a lot of people now, I've still got a lot of friends in recovery. There's so many people dying now with the whole fentanyl crisis.
Yep.
And it's a different game than when I was in it, and probably yourself as well.
Yeah.
You can't even take something now that I would have considered minor, like let's say like a Lortab. Now it can kill you.
Yeah.
It's literally life or death now. And I'm so happy to move on from that because I could have absolutely been dead. I was headed either that way, to prison, to jail, or like they say, an institution.
Yep.
And so yeah, man, that's kind of like the summary of that portion of my life. And it's definitely something that I don't think about every single day, mostly because I'm trying to look forward, but I don't shy away from it when that conversation comes up because I'm not ashamed of it.
Yep.
In the beginning, I definitely was, but now that I see, that now that I've known so many people that have been through the same story or going through the same story, it only helps to open up and talk about that because
Yeah.
there's so many people that have gone through the similar stuff like us.
Yeah. I think what you just said there at that end is so well said. And so like when you're in it, it's hard to talk about it or to admit it or not to be proud, like to accept it because like you're in it. Like you're defending your mentality, you're defending your mistakes. So it's kind of like someone wants to hear about it, you're like, nah, like don't worry about it. But because that's how I was for a bunch of years. And then when I finally like quit everything and was like, okay, I'm good now. Like I figured this out, like, what for whatever that means, figured it out. But like I'm moving forward. I'm not looking back. I love sharing my story now because similar to you, I'm like, there's so many people that are going through it. And something else you said, man, I want to bring to everybody's attention and make like a key, like a pin this down for you to understand. People don't have to have traumatic experiences to turn to something negative. Like you're sharing your story, dude. And I'm like, holy shit. Like I had two wonderful parents. My dad died 2 years ago, but like growing up, two wonderful parents, super loving marriage, two older sisters, a younger brother. We were all treated great, private school, just like the epitome of like a upper middle class, like upbringing, like everything we needed. We had no bad examples. Both my parents never ever touched any drugs. Like they barely ever drank, like the perfect example. So then Matt goes into high school and all of a sudden sophomore year starts smoking weed and it leads to this drug, being arrested in college, selling this drug, like, and people are like, when I tell the story, they're like, oh, like you must have had a rough childhood. And I'm like, no, like I had like the best childhood. I'm like, well, why'd you start doing drugs? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I tried it with a couple friends and I liked it. But there's reasons and like I've peeled layers back with like the help of people kind of digging in deeper. So I think I've come to some realizations as to why I went that route instead of this other route. But just to say, you might look at someone who looks like they have it all together and always has had it all together, and they might currently be going through it and struggling or have gone through it and struggled and now they're just on the other side of it. But it's not that stereotypical like, oh, you were abused growing up so you turned to drugs because you had no other options. Like that probably happens. I'm sure that happens quite a bit. That's a certain percent of the population, but so is the people who just chose to do it once or twice. And then it took control of them for me, it was like 15, 17 years of just like downward spiral, bad decision after bad decision. And then luckily I met my fiance, who was like the last straw that I needed to like break that drug addicted camel's back and change my life and turn it around. But it's not the stereotypical everybody has to have a bad childhood to get into that stuff. That surprises people. So not that I'm surprised to hear you had a good childhood, but like, I'm reading your bio prior to this and when you sent it to me, and I'm like, I wonder what his background was that led him to that, because a lot of the times it is the traumatic experience, but you're just like me, like perfect childhood, like couldn't have asked for anything different and still decided to fuck up my life for 10, 15, 20 years. So
Definitely, man. Yeah, and I definitely owe a lot to my fiance. I mean, she stuck with me for about 12 years, and I mean, I've put her through some hell.
yeah.
And she still loves me. I mean, we've had, a lot of ups and downs, but like now it's, my time to give back for all the bad things that I've done. And I want to be that example father, and not only father, but for other people, not only in my community, and potentially, people that I may want to consult in the future as well. And not saying that like I'm going to be doing any kind of like drug counseling or anything like that, but I feel like any level of like business or personal consultant, something like that, it has to kind of like do almost like a 360, to where like, if your client is going through something like that, it needs to be addressed as well. Because we both know, like if your mindset is not right, then your business isn't going to be right.
Yep.
And that also leads into like your relationships, your relationship with God and everything like that. And I don't care who you are, there's nothing that you can't improve on. I mean, I listen to podcasts every day. I probably listen to 3 in the morning on the way to work every single day, and I learn something new every day. Because it's funny, there's certain ones that we'll hear, and there was one I think on Zach Williams just the other week, and it's the same thing that I've heard maybe 20 different times, but he just said something in one little different way. I think he
Mm-hmm.
reworded a couple different words, and it finally spoke to me that day. And it's just like stuff like that. Like I could be sitting there just blaring, rap music or something like that. And that's what I used to do,
Yep.
but now it's like I'm putting in good stuff. I'm putting in more good stuff than putting in bad stuff. And I'm not perfect by any means. I still like my rap music and stuff like that. And
Guilty.
especially, when I lift, man, I
Yep.
can't listen to podcasts. That's just me. I
Yep.
gotta go something like hard. But yeah, in the mornings and stuff like that, man, when I'm trying to get my mindset right, like it's nothing but podcasts. I usually don't put on any music until I'm either in the gym or like late at night, like heading home from work. And that I feel has like tremendously influenced me in a positive way.
Yeah.
And not only that, but being around bad mofos like you and all the people in Apex
Yeah.
has definitely helped as well.
I say it's simple as the equation seems. So many people miss this point, but like good in, usually good out, bad in, bad out. Like it's yeah, like you said, it's the music you listen to, the TV you watch, the movies you watch, the people you surround yourself with, the food you eat, the drinks you drink, like all of that stuff. And like you said, you still listen to rap music. Like I find myself in my car a couple times a week. I don't go that many places that often because I work from home and my family's here, so I don't really have a reason to go out much. But I'll like first thing I'll do is throw on Pandora and like 90s rap, and like a couple minutes into it, I'm like, I could be filling my mind with something way better than like bitches and whores and fuck and shit and guns. And I'm I love the beat and like it brings me back and like
Yeah,
I vibe with it. So like part of me always is drawn to it, but then like the smarter, like the higher self of me is like, this isn't good content. Like I could be filling my mind with something so much better. And then like you mentioned too, on a bigger scale, which I think is even more impactful in our lives, is the people you surround yourself with. Like, Apex is a perfect example. Like my Facebook feed is probably not the content I see 90-95% Apex guys and gals that are like just crushing it and doing so many cool things with life. And the people who are negative and or neutral, like I don't cut them all out, but like if you're just talking about like ordinary everyday stuff over and over and over again. It's never about improvement. It's never about inspiring other people. It's never about being your best self. I'm like, I'm happy for you and I want you to do well, but like, I want to be inspired by every piece of content that I consume. And I'm not great at it. I'm good at it. And I'm getting better at it, but it's a key focus for me at this point because I know how quickly, and I won't, but like how quickly I could revert back to the old Matt. Like you start putting a little bit of bad in with food. Okay. Now you have a couple of drinks more often than not. And then a friend invites you over to some, and like there's weed there and you're like, oh, I'll just, and like this isn't happening in my life, but I could see how it could. And all of a sudden it's like bad in, bad in, bad in, now bad out, bad out. My business sucks. My relationship sucks. My, leading by example, I'm not doing anymore. And all of a sudden things fall apart. So that's why for me, like, and you're probably the same way. Like I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. Like I'm now all in on development, self-improvement, leadership, business, family, leading by example, fitness. Like that consumes me because it used to be the exact opposite. And now looking in the rear view, I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm ever going back to that old version of me. Like not even just because I'm a dad and a father and like a husband now, but because like I feel so good when I wake up on a daily basis now, living the life I live, and I can kind of close my eyes and put myself back in that old space where I was before, where it's like you wake up and it's like, when's the next hit? Okay, now my money's going low. Like, how am I going to get the next couple dollars to buy my next bag? And it's just like, fuck all that. Like, I want none of that anymore. So I admire the crap out of you, man. Because I love hearing stories of people who struggled, found themselves, and now are succeeding and excelling in life, because it's not always the case. Like you probably have friends who've like, or know of people who've died from addiction and stuff like that. Like we're blessed, we're lucky, but we're also fortunate that we chose to go a different route, because not everybody makes that choice quick enough or soon enough, and it kills people. And like I look back on my stuff and I'm like, I could have been dead or in jail many, 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 many times from the stupid shit that I was doing. And God kept me here on this earth. So like with that gift, we got a lot of work to do moving forward.
No, absolutely, man. You're totally right with that. And I now have this, like, I don't even know what you would call it, but like, so there's this thing inside. I'm sure you have it as an entrepreneur as well. So I sell mattresses and furniture. So in my showroom, I actually have a big 65-inch TV with couches behind it, in case it's mostly like if there's like a sporting event on, I'll put the TV on. Like I don't even watch it, but like I might be like vacuuming or something like that. But it's mostly like I like to say if there's kids coming in and I need 30 minutes with your parents, like you can watch cartoons or whatever you want to watch. But like I had one week where I was like really, really sick, still went to work, and like I would get there early and I would try to put the TV on. I couldn't sit there for more than 15 minutes because I just felt like I was like wasting time. Like it's like I have this little like guy on my shoulder. Like even being sick, I feel like I still had to go do things. And I feel like kind of like almost like the same way when it comes to like reverting back to like those those old habits. Like let's chill all day on a Tuesday on a day off. Like if I have a day off, I've got things to do still. And even though I may not make it in the office every single day, there's always work to be done. There's always other stuff to be doing. And so I wouldn't be able to. You couldn't pay me to sleep in till noon. I mean, you couldn't pay me. My body will not do that. Like I've just got other things to do. And it's just, I feel like that old portion of me is like dead, laying in the ditch, but I still can look over and see him there. Because you're absolutely right. A couple bad decisions and I could be right in that same spot.
You need that reminder, that constant reminder.
It's all too familiar, because one thing that I did learn from some of the substance abuse counseling that I had was that your brain is wired to think of the positive only. And that's why they say when time heals all wounds, and that may not necessarily be true for everyone, but when you go back to think of certain things, your first instinct might be something positive, even though it was a nasty experience. That's why I think a lot of people will get back with like abusive exes that they haven't seen in 2 years, because they go back to, oh, when it was good, it was really good, and
Yep.
stuff like that. And I think that could be, any kind of a situation.
Yeah.
And so the brain is a crazy, crazy thing, man. It truly, truly is, because I feel like you can adapt to any situation, good or hellishly bad.
Yep.
And it's really cool that that we can now foresee, when we're in, you can almost see something bad coming up before it happens, and we just don't put ourselves in that situation.
Yep.
Or before something happens, we can remove ourselves from that situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely, like a game changer.
Absolutely is. Well, my brother, man, thank you, dude, for sharing your story, man. I know, like you said, you enjoy sharing it, which I appreciate, because I'm wired the same way, that I feel like there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's made me who I am today, which I wouldn't trade it for the world. So it's all part of the story. But not everybody's comfortable, willing, and able to share that kind of vulnerable side of their past, and like their lowest lows. It's all about the social media, like highlight reels, which we're all guilty of to a certain extent. But like, these are the conversations I mostly appreciate, because it's just a reality check for people that, like, again, someone watching you on social media for the last 6 months might be like, this dude's got it all together. Like, of course he's living his life. Like, he's got it all together. And you're like, no, like literally years ago, I was like rock bottom and like on the verge of like death or jail. Like, so no, I don't have it all together, and I'm still working towards figuring it all out. But it's that inspiration, I think, that people need in life, to know that they're not alone in their struggles. And even though most people on social media are like, hey, this life is great, again, guilty as charged, like, we all have our struggles too, but you can fight your way through those struggles, man. So I deeply appreciate, A, who you are, what you've overcome, and who you're becoming, and how you're leading by example. And then B, coming on the show and sharing with our audience and helping inspire some people out there who are going to hear the story, man.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad you had me. Thanks for
Absolutely,
inviting me
brother.
on here.
Where can people connect with you? What's the best place if people want to just connect with you online and be inspired by you? What's a good place to find you?
So probably the one that I'm most active on is going to be Facebook.
Okay.
And I think it's facebook.com/Stu Segura. But that's probably the number one spot that I'll be on.
Okay.
And if I'm on there, I'm going to try to share some motivating stuff. And I'll also share some information about sleeping as well, because I can help you guys sleep too.
Awesome, man. Well, brother, thanks for being here. For everyone listening to this episode, thanks for listening to it. Like I said in the beginning, if you got some value out of this, if you know somebody who's struggling with addiction, is like on the verge of being able to kick it, but is still struggling with it, or not even if it's just addiction, with drugs and stuff, whatever it is, if they're struggling, perfect example right here with Stu, that you can fight for years and eventually overcome it, and then you can start to live and continue to live the life of your dreams. So share it with somebody that this can touch. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to inspire people, get out there, live the best lives that they can, and inspire everyone else to do that, so we can create, like I always say, this massive ripple effect of positivity out into the universe, where the world just becomes a better place, because we're all leading by example. So Stu, thank you, brother, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening to everybody.
Thanks, sir.
And I will see you on the battlefield.